If you're new around these parts, you will have noticed that I don't really do wrap-ups every month. I do them every season just because I don't really read enough books every month to justify doing a wrap-up for that month. But so I do a wrap-up every 3 months, which is every season. Summer in Australia goes from the beginning of December to the end of February. It's now March, so this is my summer wrap-up for 2020. So let's start with December. The first book I read in December was This Is How You Lose the Time War by Max Gladstone and Amal El-Mohtar. I mentioned this this and the next book I mentioned way back in my favorite books of 2019 video. So that was the first time you'd ever actually heard me talk about these books. And my feelings on them haven't really changed. I really love the lyrical writing style in this book. If you don't know, this is like a queer lesbian space opera about two time agents on either side of an opposing time war, and it's written in an epistolary fashion, so it's like letters between the two, and it's interspersed with like prose as well. I love it. I think it's really good. It's kind of twisty towards the end. I love the writing style. It's something that I could reread and just find more and more in there every time I go back and reread it, and I just love it. It's great. Again But Better by Christine Riccio is a very divisive book. I was not expecting to see as many people disliking this book as they do. I was not expecting for me to put this on a favorites video to be some kind of an unpopular opinion, but I guess it is. I don't know. A lot of people say that this book, I still stand by it. I really like this book. I think that a lot of the criticisms that people have of this book is that that the main character is pretty much just Christine, and we're kind of just reading about Christine. But I don't know, I kind of don't mind that. Like, I feel like this is a book for, like, if you're a fan of Christine, you will enjoy this book so much more than if you're just like a casual reader who picks up this book, which I know isn't the point, but that's why I enjoyed it. I liked it because I'm a fan of Christine, and I liked it for all of those self-referential jokes and that sort of thing. Like, that's what really made this book for me. I really like the way that Christine writes Shane as well. I think that Christine took Shane, who is a character who can be quite unlikable, and she wrote her in a way that makes her a very likable character, so I really appreciated that about the book. But yeah, I still really like this book. I think that even after seeing a lot of really negative reviews for it, I still really stand by what I said about this book. This book that I read in December was Monument by Will Kostakis. This is an Australian-based urban fantasy about this 16-year-old boy named Connor who just kind of had like what he calls a friend divorce. So he's kind of feeling a bit lonely, but he discovers this chamber underneath his school, which pulls him into this conspiracy with these ancient gods who created the world and these people that are hunting them down. I'm of two minds with this book, because part of me feels like it was very fast-paced and action-packed, and I really liked that about it, but also the other part of me feels like it was very rushed. And I think towards the end that really came to fruition. It sort of just like ends, like so much happens in those last two chapters and it just ends. I feel like the new information that we learned wasn't given enough time to really breathe and to let the characters take it all in. One thing that I did really enjoy about this book is that it features a gay romance, and the love interest in this book is Indigenous Australian, and that's intersectionality that we'd love to see, you know? It's not own voices, but it's great, and I love it. This is the first book in a series. The second book, Rebel Gods, comes out, I think it's August 4th. So I'll be very interested to pick up the sequel and see where this goes, because this ended on a real cliffhanger, which really changed the status quo for like the entire world of this book. So I'm interested to see where this goes. I will be picking up the sequel. We go from a pretty good gay romance to a very not good gay romance, and that's The Poison Within by Rachel Marie Piercy. I mentioned this as a book that I had to finish in 2019, and it was the last book I finished, and I did it. I got there, I did it. I didn't enjoy it, but I got there. I'm really sad to say that I did not enjoy this book. The only part of this book that I enjoyed was the gay romance, and even that wasn't great. I didn't connect to any of the characters in this book. I feel like a lot of the characters were said to have changed, like, by other characters. They were like, oh, they've changed, you know, and like that's multiple characters in this book. What am I trying to say here? I think with this book, I didn't connect to any of the characters because I felt like where they ended up at the end of the book wasn't really deserved, and I feel like the characters only ended up where the author wanted them to end up and not where the characters would have actually ended up. Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense at all. The one thing that I did like about this book was the setting. I think that Rachel Marie Piercy does a really good job of establishing setting and creating a very interesting, different fantasy world, but that's really the only good thing I have to say about this book. I didn't like Raya, I didn't like Cam, I didn't like any of the characters in this book. Yeah, I will say though, I'm interested to see what Rachel Marie Piercy comes out with next, because I am interested in supporting own voices, self-published authors, but I didn't enjoy this book. So that's the end of December, and now we're going to move on to January. At the start of this year, my mum and I kind of did this challenge where I was going to read her top-rated book of last year, and she was going to read one of my top-rated books of last year. So I gave her The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, and she gave me Any Ordinary Day by Lee Sales. This is a non-fiction book about these different crises that have occurred in Australia, and how people who are involved in that have dealt with the aftermath and moving on and trying to live your life after these terrible things happen to you. This is not anything that I would normally pick up, and I did enjoy it for Lee Sales' writing style. I enjoyed the way Lee Sales wrote this book, but I feel like what I was supposed to get out of this book wasn't actually what I got out of this book. I think that I'm not necessarily the target audience for this sort of thing, so maybe this is something that I'll come back to and I'll reread years from now, and I'll get something completely different out of it that I got out of my first initial reading. But it was still very enjoyable. Well, I don't know if enjoyable was the word. It was very informative. I learnt a lot about Australian history because I don't really know a lot about that. Lee Sales is a very well-respected, very famous Australian journalist. I love her. She's fantastic. So to read this book from her was really great, and I'm glad that I read this book. The next book that I read was also a book that my mum has been wanting me to read for years now, and that's The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. I went into this book not expecting to enjoy it at all. In fact, I think I spent the first 300 pages of this book just thinking, why am I reading this? I'm not going to enjoy this. I just don't like thinking that this just wasn't the book for me. I wasn't going to actually enjoy it. But then something clicked, and I have no idea what it was. And I just couldn't put it down for the last 150 pages. And I didn't love it, but something happened that made me enjoy it and become very invested in the characters and the situation. And I don't know, I can't really explain it because I don't know how it happened in terms of the writing. It wasn't like anything specific that happened in the book, but I just became suddenly very invested in this story. And it was really, really good. I really enjoyed The Book Thief. And it's definitely something that I will want to go back and reread just because, I don't know, I just feel very compelled to. Yeah, I really, really enjoyed this book, and it was very surprising to me. The last book I read in January is very different from the other two, and that is Our Dreams at Dusk, Shimanami Tasogare Volume 1 by Yuki Kamatani. This is a Japanese manga, which I've never read on this channel before, but Yuki Kamatani is ex-gender and they are asexual. So that's interesting. This manga follows these different characters in a small Japanese city, and they're coming to terms with their LGBTQ plus identities, and it's about this, I forget what they call it. It's about this place where they can all come and be themselves and just, figure out who they are. And it's about these characters. I think I'm gonna like where this story is going, but I think I need to read the rest of the volumes before I make my fully formed decision on it. But I have a feeling this is something that I'm going to really enjoy the more I read it. With January out of the way, we now move on to February, which has the highest volume of books that I read. And the first book that I read in February was The Fifth Elephant by Terry Pratchett. I have been meaning to read this since way back in September. I finally got around to it, and it was really, really good. I made a whole video about it. I'll just link that up there because I don't want to repeat my thoughts, but I loved the way that Terry Pratchett dealt with the characters in this book. It's just, it was great, and I really, really loved it. Honestly, one of my favorite City Watch books so far. It was really, really good. If you're following me on this channel, then you'll know that I participated in Blackathon in February, and my first read for Blackathon was Concrete Park by Tony Puria and Erica Alexander. I went in, I don't know how to talk about this book. I got this book out of the library, and for those of you who know, I do like my Insignificant Thoughts videos where I do dedicated videos about the books that I get out from the library and that sort of thing. I didn't do one for this because I really just don't know what to say about it. Like, I finished it and it was just so, like, meh. Like, I just didn't feel anything about it. I didn't really connect to any of the characters. Sitting here right now, I couldn't tell you any of the characters' names, and I'm not going to look them up because that would be, like, disingenuous of my reading experience, I feel. Like, I just didn't connect with any of it. I really enjoyed the art style. I will say that Jerry from Onyx Pages commented on my Blackathon TBR and was like, oh, Concrete Park. I am interested to see what you're going to say about that. And I was like, oh, why? Is it not good? And then I read it and I was like, ah, yes, I understand. And I even watched Jerry's video about Concrete Park and I was like, oh, I feel exactly the same. Like, I don't even know what to say about this. There is an LGBT relationship in this, but it's done through very much like a heterosexual male gaze. It's not like, I don't know, there's not a whole lot of representation for it. I just didn't connect with it at all. It's about this prison planet that criminals on a future Earth get sent to. And it really just felt like a pilot episode for something else. A lot of characters got introduced, there were a lot of names, and I feel like it's all going to pay off in the future, but I'm not going to keep reading, so I just didn't connect to, like, any of it. And I'm disappointed about it. Like, my first Blackathon read wasn't what I expected it to be, and I'm a bit mad about it. Like, and I don't know, it was fine. There was nothing bad about it. I just didn't really enjoy it. I don't know. After that, I was kind of on like a bit of a graphic novel comics kick, so I decided to read Heartstopper Volume 3, also because it came in the mail and I couldn't resist. But, yeah, this was really, really good. I give 5 stars to all of the Heartstopper volumes because I just love it. It's so cute and it's fantastic. This one starts to delve into more like serious topics like eating disorders and that sort of thing, so be aware of that going into it. But I really, really enjoyed this volume. I think that Alice Oseman is taking it in a direction that's very, very interesting. I heard somewhere that there's only going to be 4 volumes, so I don't know how we're going to wrap up this in another volume. Maybe I'm misinformed though. I don't know, but I am very much enjoying this series. I really like these graphic novels, and yeah, it was fantastic. If you're looking for something light to read that you want, and it's like wholesome and gay and soft, I recommend Heartstopper. It's fantastic. So, after that, I was like, I need to continue Blackathon, so I decided to read Binti by Nadia Korafor. I read this on audio, which is different to what I was expecting, but my library wasn't going to give me the ebook for another like 6 weeks, and I was like, I cannot do that, so I used my Audible credit to get Binti by Nadia Korafor, and I really enjoyed listening to it. I think that the narrator, who I can't remember the name of, but I'll put it on the screen, did a really, really good job of getting it all across. I made a dedicated video for Binti, so I'm not gonna go too in-depth into my thoughts, but I'm very interested in continuing the trilogy. I think I love the way that Binti dealt with stereotypes that have existed in the science fiction genre for such a long time before this. And yeah, I really like Nadia Korafor's writing. I definitely want to read more of Nadia Korafor, but yeah, I really loved Binti. I'm excited to read more of her. And then I read something else entirely. I was doing a book club with my friends and I needed to read this finally, so I read Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Eames. I mentioned this book in a 5-star predictions video way back when, and yeah, I loved this book. It was so much fun. This book follows a group of mercenaries who are old and they're retired. They haven't seen each other in like 20 years, but they're all starting to come back together because there's this one band member who needs to get the band back together to save his daughter, and it's just great. This is the first book in a series. I love it. It's fantastic. I love all of the characters in this book. They're all so like well established and they all have such good chemistry with each other. I love Moog. Moog is the gay wizard who lives in a tower that I didn't know my soul needed, and I love him so much. Fantastic. He's great. He has my soul. I love Moog. I love the world building in this. I think it's done in a very different and interesting way. I liked how this was kind of based on Dungeons and Dragons, kind of like lore and the way that the magic works. They're all just sort of like magical items, and I don't know, it's great. There's no like, it's just fun, but it's also so emotional and just great. I'm not doing a good job of selling it, but I love it. It's fantastic. If you're interested in getting into fantasy, I would highly recommend this. If you like Terry Pratchett but are hesitant about reading other fantasy. Nicholas Eames' writing style really reminds me of Terry Pratchett's writing style. I think it's that kind of dry humor. I really like the way that this was written, and I just love it. I can't wait to read the sequel. I own it, but I can't wait to read it. It's going to be so good. Then I decided that I had to continue Blackathon, so I read The New Testament by Jericho Brown. This is a collection of poetry about race and sexuality in contemporary America, and it's just really good. It's very melancholy, and I really love the way that Jericho Brown writes. It's also he interweaves these themes of religion. It's just great. And I love it, and I will always reread Jericho Brown's poetry. I definitely want to get more of Jericho Brown's poetry, but for now, I just love this. This is so good. I didn't mention this book on my Blackathon TBR, but oh well. I decided to pick up The Black Flamingo by Dean Arter. This is a book that's written in verse, and it's about Michael, who is biracial, and it follows him from his birth all the way up into his college years. It's about him coming to terms with his identity, with his sexuality. It's also about drag, and it's great, and I love it. I learnt a lot about drag. My boyfriend made me watch season 7 of RuPaul's Drag Race, and ever since then, I've been very interested in drag, so I was really interested to pick this up, and I loved it. It was so good. I don't think there will ever be a time in my life where I don't feel the need to come back and reread these words from Dean Arter. I just loved it. And after I finished it, it was just, it impacted me so much, and it was great, and I loved it so much. I would highly recommend The Black Flamingo. It was really, really good, and I haven't heard a lot of people talking about it, but I love it. It's fantastic. And it's written in verse, and there are really nice illustrations in there from Anshika Kular, who is a gender-fluid illustrator. So I really love the way that was also brought into it. It's truly is just a queer book, and I love it. It's so good. It's just, it's great. I love it. I wasn't gonna film this video until I finished this last book, so this is the reason that this is going up late, because I actually took this into March a little bit, but I won't tell anyone if you don't. A Taste of Honey by Kai Ashanti Wilson is incredibly short, but the writing style is so different. It feels like I'm reading a classic, but set in a fantasy world. I've never read any classic fantasy, so I don't know if this is similar to that in any way, but I just love this. I think it's fantastic. This is about a boy named Akib and a man named Lucrio, and they are from 2 different nations. These nations have come together very briefly for some royal negotiations. They fall in love very quickly. It's like a whirlwind romance, and I love it so much. This is Afrofuturist queer fantasy romance, and it's great. I love it. I will say though, I just wanted a little bit more from it. I felt like the plot towards the end could have been given a little more time to breathe. That's kind of a theme with this video. I don't know. I enjoyed it, but I think I would have enjoyed it more had I got more from it. Not necessarily from the end, just had it been given a bit more time to breathe. If it was just that little bit longer, I think I would have enjoyed it so much more. But I still loved it. It was great. It was fantastic. I definitely want to go back and reread it. And yeah, I really want to read more of Kai Ashanti Wilson. He doesn't have a lot out there, but I'm very excited to pick up. I think it's The Sorcerer of the Wild Deeps, which is also set in this world. I'm really excited to read that as well. I just love Akib so much. It's great, and I love him. That was the last book I read in summer, and that's all the books that I read in February. These aren't all the books that I read in summer because I don't own all the books that I read in summer, but if you've read any of these books, or if you plan to read any of the books that I mentioned in this video, let me know in the comments down below so we can chat about them. I would love to know what you think of what I think. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again next week with a new one. Bye!